Hello. Once again, I'm Justin Rosen-Smolin, Vice President for Thriving Communities and Partnerships here at Reconstructing Judaism. In the Thriving Communities Department at Reconstructing Judaism, my dedicated team and I are asking how we can support our 94 communities and the wider movement in navigating the full range of challenges and opportunities they face, including fraught moments like this one, and how these moments are real opportunities to lean into discomfort, to learn from one another, to recommit to our values, which we've attempted to do today, and ultimately grow. Practically, we'll be making a number of these elective sessions available for future listening and learning in your community. And in the coming year, you can expect more cutting-edge resources and support from our team and the wider organization so you can meet this moment with clarity and with purpose. As a Jewish religious movement in a turbulent time, our role is to make sense of the current moment with guidance from the teachings and traditions of our past, and just as much, to stretch our imaginations beyond the limitations of now to envision and work towards a better future, carried by our most sacred values and aspirations, which is where we're headed now.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you to all of you for participating in our very jam-packed day. We are in our closing session. We're going to hear from 4 speakers. We don't have time for them to interact. I hope that we'll have an opportunity for you to learn from them and for them to talk with each other in the future. So each of them are going to speak in turn. I'm just going to offer a very brief framing. Going to begin by saying that boundaries are very hard for Reconstructionists. One of the major developments of the emergence of the modern period was the shattering of rabbinic authority, and with that, the introduction of many different expressions of Judaism, the religion, and of Jewishness, the extra-religious experience of being a Jew. And Mordecai Kaplan, the founding thinker of Reconstructionism, acknowledged diversity as a reality of modernity. He assessed it as a strength, and he also was part of a group of thinkers, many of them social scientists, who were conceptualizing pluralism as a strategy to manage diversity and to harness its strengths. So Reconstructionism was founded with a core commitment to diversity. Now, there are many continuities with the moment that Kaplan and the circle gathered around him were living through when they started to formulate Reconstructionism. There are also many, many differences. We face some of the same key challenges that they do, and we also, in our postmodern moment, also are confronted with new ones that generation never could have imagined. I would say very significantly because of the rise of the internet and social media and how flat the world has gotten. So at this moment in time, we continue to assess diversity as a strength. And we're just like them, we're still trying to balance the space for individuals within community. We're trying to figure out how to how to strengthen particularism and balance it with universalism and without chauvinism, or in the words that Rabbi Sarah Bremer-Schleit said earlier, without tribalism. We're trying to incorporate democratic practice into Jewish life in place of that shattered authority. So making space in their day and in ours, making space for diversity, for the belief that each Jew would individually piece together our own identity within the diverse Jewish civilization, within the diverse Jewish people, means that boundaries are really hard. So here today, in this day, Reconstructing Judaism and the RA, the major organizations of the Reconstructionist movement, we follow the classical Reconstructionist approach. We pay attention to boundaries as others sometimes define them, to see who's being pushed aside or silenced or undervalued, and we try to draw them toward the center and capture all that they have to offer. And more than anything, we foster joyful Jewish life in its many expressions as possible. And a line that I think I've said more than any other over the course of my presidency is that boundary maintenance in an era of contested authority is not generative. What we try to do is focus on the generative. So we invest in as many different ways as possible to experience and to engage and to explore Jewish wisdom and Jewish practice and building Jewish community. So that whole thing has been an organizing principle of this entire convening, and especially of this closing panel, which is oriented toward the future. We're not focusing on the past. We're not focusing on the past of the Reconstructionist movement very much. We're not focusing on 1948 or 1967 so much. We're not trying to litigate the present. We are closing with orienting ourselves toward the future. That is what we believe to be part of what helps us to capture all of the energy, all of the potential, all of the possibilities. So we asked these four incredibly wise panelists to share what they want to build toward. And we asked them to approach this expressly as a religious movement. This came up in the question and answer a little bit. I want to repeat that and it came up in the question and answer of the opening plenary. We are not an advocacy or policy organization. Many Reconstructionists are very, very politically active, both on domestic issues and also around Israel and Palestine. But that is largely through organizations that are both allied and also sometimes remote from the Reconstructionist movement. And even as we have a very expansive definition of what it means to be religious, what it means to be Jewish, that's where we put most of our energy. That's what draws us together more than anything else. So the three questions that we asked our panelists to address was, one is, what is your vision for the future of the region and the North American Jewish community's relationship to it? A second is, how do your Jewish values or your Reconstructionist understanding, your Reconstructionist values inform your vision? And we also asked them to reflect, if they wanted, on how political identity labels are and also are not useful to constructive conversations about Israel, about Palestine, and about the North American Jewish future. So with that, I want to turn to the panelists. They are all amazing people. They are all inspiring rabbis. They are all important teachers for me, and I hope for you as well. And we talk about diversity. They also, each of them graduated in a different decade. They live in very geographically different places. And as much as we can assess from conversations and statements that they have different takes and different approaches to this answer. So I'm going to introduce them in turn, and they're going to speak in this order without any interruptions. They'll just go one to one. So Rabbi Amy Klein graduated from RRC in 1996. She lives in Israel. She is a certified pastoral counselor serving the community and also as a volunteer co-coordinator of the Upper Galilee, Jordan Valley region for the Protest to Save Israel's Democracy. The second speaker will be Rabbi Solomon Hoffman, who graduated from RRC in 2023 and serves as the Associate Rabbi of Reconstructionist Affiliate Kihila in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Solomon has extensive training in chaplaincy and is a gifted composer, musician, and creator of musical experiences. He composed the music that led us into this session, and there's also a beautiful video that goes with it that I hope you'll have a chance to see someday. Rabbi Lori Zimmerman graduated from RRC in 2003, and since that time has served Congregation Sha'arei Shamayim, the Reconstructionist community in Madison, Wisconsin. She has written extensively and taught extensively on Israel and Palestine, including a 2015 curriculum for kids and teenagers titled Reframing Israel, teaching kids to think critically about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And she's currently working on a book on Israel-Palestine education. And the panel will end with remarks from Rabbi Jonathan Kligler, who graduated from RRC in 1989. Jonathan recently retired as the rabbi of Kihilat Lev Shalem, the Woodstock Jewish congregation, and he still makes his home in New York's Hudson Valley. Jonathan is a musician, a dancer, a writer, a master teacher, and a joy-filled spiritual leader. Thanks to all of you for being here. Amy.
Deborah, thank you so much for inviting me to share this final space with my wonderful colleagues and the extraordinary people who make up Reconstructing Judaism. The place where I am, the place I call here, in its full existential meaning, in the Hula Valley, 6 miles from the Israel-Lebanon border, with 2 sons in the IDF, as a member of Standing Together, of Rabbis for Human Rights, and of the protest movement called The Free, I cannot lay out a vision for the future whose echo is not one of false hope. Because here is at the edge of an abyss, created out of the desire for power, wealth, personal political survival, Jewish superiority, and religious fanaticism of ours and theirs. Hence, rather than a vision, I will lay out 3 guiding principles for getting to safety: physical, moral, and spiritual for all in this land. The first principle is the ability to change our thinking, to shift our understanding of the balance of values and tension in order to sharpen our moral vision and the behavior that must flow from it. Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan clarified for us the role of religion in our lives when he defined Judaism as evolving. He did not hesitate to preserve ancient values when right and to replace them when unjust. I cannot know whether Kaplan would today hold on to the label of Zionist as useful, or whether we can fill that container with shared meaning. However, if the label Zionist and anti-Zionist have now become stumbling blocks to achieving Kaplan's fundamental teaching that the essence of being a Jew means that one cannot work toward the salvation of self without working toward universal salvation, perhaps best we should cast them aside. And with them, both the blindness to immoral conclusions of certain lines of thinking and to unjust behaviors seeking legitimacy. The second principle is what Father Greg Boyle, the founder of Homeboy Industries, teaches in the name of Mother Teresa. We are not called to be successful. We are called to be faithful. Here, I am referring to remaining faithful both to a values-based process to work through our differences and reach truths on Israel-Palestine, and to building covenantal community to support that process. At heart, I understand covenant as a commitment, albeit a difficult one, to extend chesed, grace, to all with whom we are in connection, and even more challenging, to extend our ability to connect, a task at which I often personally fail. The third principle, stay in the struggle. As Rabbi Waxman noted, struggle is who we are, Yisrael, or in the words of protest movements, I am protest, I am hope. I put those words, Ani mecha'a, Ani tikva, on the first protest sign I made 4.5 years ago to fight the nascent dictatorship, keenly aware that removing this government from power is the key to undoing the occupation, the root of what is wrong and unjust in the place I call here. In the last few months, participating in civil disobedience in the face of a government that holds itself above the law, I have been more and less aggressively dragged from sit-down protests by the police. Others have dealt with much more, and we are only at the beginning. But last night, I was moved to put into practice the challenge of connection I raised. I told the young border police blocking our return to the protest site to keep themselves safe, and I told them that I love them. When every morning, the other side is planning, what can I destroy today? And by the other side, that could be any side. Our side, the other side, the internal side. After we give thanks for being alive, I want to suggest that our next thought needs to be, what can I prevent? What can I fix? And who should I join in these tasks? I hope you and I will be joining together. A great man once said, with malice toward none, with firmness, in the right, as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Thank you for those beautiful words. Nearly a year ago, our ritual committee at Kehillah Synagogue began to craft a prayer for Israel that could speak to the heartbreak of the current war, drawing from lines from different prayers and adding some of our own. Since we have been asked to reflect today from our standpoint as religious leaders, it feels appropriate to begin with an excerpt from this prayer. Nurture a shared future for all who call the land home, and help us to be partners in realizing this vision. The words nurture a shared future for all who call the land home is from a version of the prayer for Israel by Rabbi Ayelet Cohen. The next words, help us to be partners in realizing this vision, was inspired by one of our congregants who said that she wanted to see us in this prayer. We, as American Jews, are a part of this too. As we have said this prayer over the last year, I am struck by how people who I know hold different orientations toward Israel and Palestine come together to say these words each Shabbat. People who could easily fall into political debate can share in spiritual aspiration. Our ritual committee has affirmed the use of this prayer despite some negative reactions from visitors to our congregation, and I am proud that our community has stood by its values. I hope this example aligns with much of what you've heard today, and I appreciate our movement for lifting up what holds us together amidst our differences. Even so, these underlying differences can still be the source of tension and division. While we debate the definitions and implications of terms like Zionism and anti-Zionism, I increasingly meet Jews, especially in younger generations, who are exploring their connection to Israel and Palestine without strongly identifying with one of these labels. They are looking for communities where they can ask hard questions and be a part of the dialogue. One of the elements I valued during my own education at RRC was the opportunity to be in deep conversation with classmates who held different perspectives, and to know that we shared a mutual respect and commitment to staying in community. At Kehillah Synagogue, I worked with my colleague, Rabbi Jen Feldman, to start dialogue programs that offer space for this kind of relationship building. They allow our members to listen and hear more deeply and understand one another while not falling into patterns of debate or argument. As we reflect on the future of the Jewish community in North America, we also need to consider how we relate to those outside of the Jewish community, particularly those who vocally advocate for Palestinians or criticize Israel. Are there lessons we can take from the bridges we have tried to build within the Jewish community to reach out beyond? When people in America express solidarity with Palestinians, some in the Jewish community view this as being one-sided and respond from a place of fear and opposition. The rhetoric of some of the pro-Palestinian protests has been challenging, and unfortunately, some of it has crossed into anti-Semitism. But what I see from so many who have stood up for Palestinians in the last year, is a desire that Palestinians have the basic human dignity that we each deserve. I was most recently in Israel and Palestine in the summer of 2022, and it was deeply concerning to hear what Palestinians were experiencing then. I was living in Tel Aviv and studying at Bina as part of my RRC education, and the summer included many moving spiritual and intellectual moments connecting with Israelis. It also felt important to spend time learning from Palestinians. My classmates and I participated in a delegation with the Center for Jewish Nonviolence and found other avenues to meet Palestinians in different settings. Whether in rural areas, East Jerusalem, Hebron, the northern or southern West Bank, we heard stories that held a common thread. The actions of Israeli settlers, the behaviors of the IDF, and the policies of the Israeli government were collectively creating senseless injustices for Palestinian civilians. A shepherd harassed in his fields, children violently attacked on their way to school, homes demolished, a lack of access to natural resources, It was heartbreaking. This was the opposite of nurturing a shared future, and it was a version of a future that is totally at odds with progressive Zionism. How do we respond when Israel does not live up to our ideals? When we feel discomfort with the way Israeli policies are playing out, or anguish from the deaths of innocent Palestinians, I think that is a sign to us that we need to be more specific and vocal about the future Israel that we do support. Can we as American Jews go deeper than saying, I support Israel, but I'm anti-Netanyahu, or I stand with Israel, but oppose the government's policies? For those who are feeling this tension, I think there is potential to build bridges with those beyond the Jewish community who express public support for Palestinians. Can we do the hard work of finding shared values to see partners instead of enemies? Can we find common ground and envision a future where all Israelis and Palestinians experience justice and peace? My hope is that this will not only create a better future in the Middle East, but that it will also strengthen the American Jewish future as well. Thank you.
So I want to begin by thanking you, Deborah, for the invitation to speak today, and more importantly, for your tireless leadership of our movement. I'm really grateful to be here, and especially I'm touched to be on a panel with Amy, who guided my rabbinic studies in Jerusalem in 1999 and 2000, and who in many ways introduced me to the complexities of Israel. Last month, I attended an Israel education meeting, and I had the opportunity to gently ask a leader of a Jewish federation, what do you say when young Jews watch the news and they see Palestinian children dying under the rubble of Gaza? What do you tell them? She sidestepped my question. Maybe for her it was the wrong question. But at this time of bitterness and war, I think it's a crucial question. As Reconstructionists, we share so many values. We believe in B'Tselem Elohim. All people are created in the image of God. We believe in creating peace and working for justice and treating people with respect and cultivating a deep empathy for others. We also believe in Ahavat Yisrael, in love of the Jewish people. And even as we share values, we can disagree on political principles. I believe that all parties should obey international law. Palestinians should enjoy the same rights and freedoms and protections that Israeli Jews enjoy. Jewish supremacy is a destructive force for every inhabitant of the land. These principles are the foundation of my vision of Israel and Palestine. The terms Zionism and anti-Zionism are so present in our discourse, but too often we mean different things with these terms, and they prevent us from diving into meaningful and deliberative conversations. I think we should drop both words and instead focus on this question. What do you say when Palestinian children are dying in Gaza? This question matters for three reasons. The first and most important is that it is a moral question. The stain of this war will define the soul of the Jewish people for generations. In response to Hamas's horrific killing of 1,200 people in southern Israel and taking almost 250 people as hostages, the Israeli military has killed over 44,000 people so far in Gaza, including 13,000 children. The second is a strategic question. As Trump takes power, we will have to decide whether to ally ourselves with liberal and progressive communities, which tend to be more critical of Israel, or to align ourselves with the far right. And the third is a question rooted in self-interest. We all want to maintain vibrant Jewish communities, but we will lose the next generation if we ignore or justify the devastation of Gaza. Our kids are growing up with different questions and experiences, and many of them have little patience for our silence. What kind of a future do I support for the region? one in which Israeli Jews and Palestinians live in freedom in democratic societies with equal rights. I don't know if that's one state or two states or some kind of federation, confederation, but honestly, I don't care. I support any model that will create a stable and peaceful and just society for both Israeli Jews and Palestinians. I also don't know what the North American Jewish community will look like 20 years from now, whether young Jews will create new and compelling expressions of Jewishness, or whether the community will become so brittle that it will decline. I do know that the Reconstructionist movement is well poised to manage the polarization that threatens to rupture the larger Jewish community beyond repair. Our political diversity is our strength. Our commitment to our Jewish values, along with democracy and equality, is our strength. Our willingness to think critically and self-reflectively is our strength. And I do know that we must not ignore or justify the starving children of Gaza. We must not remain silent.
Thank you. Thank you to all the previous speakers and to Deborah. And I'm honored to be able to share my thoughts. And I want to also thank everyone on Zoom who has lasted this long on their screens. That's an accomplishment. I want to contrast what I see as some of the essential differences between revolutionary ideologies with the evolutionary approach that's the hallmark of Reconstructionism. All revolutionary movements are based on negating the past and replacing the past order with a new one. Revolutionary ideologies are binary and messianic, promising a utopian future. This clear schematic is part of what gives them their power and motivates people to dedicate their lives to unlikely outcomes. And indeed, revolutionary movements in the modern era have changed history. Zionism is a great example. But because revolutionary ideologies are so schematized and simplified, they ignore the complexities of history and human nature and needs. This ideologically caused blindness and rigidity leads to unintended and usually tragic consequences. In its origins, Zionism was essentially a revolutionary movement. Most early Zionists viewed the experience of the Jews in diaspora as a debasing reality that needed to be negated by creating a new Jew, muscular and self-sufficient. The term for this is Shlilat HaGolah, the negation of the diaspora. Also in its binary schematics, much of early Zionist ideology also ignored the realities of the existing Arab population in Palestine. Zionist slogans such as "a land with no people for a people with no land" were powerfully motivating, but detached from reality. My colleague Rabbi Bob Tabak terms this delusion as Shlilat HaPalestinim, the negation of the Palestinians. These binary zero-sum versions of Zionism continue to hold great sway in the policymaking and behavior of Israel to the degree that we are witnessing a common and tragic endgame of revolutions. The once powerless become the ruthless wielders of power, become the very oppressors they once sought to overthrow. In my opinion, the current ideology of anti-colonialism, in its most extreme versions, also qualifies as a revolutionary ideology. As such, it reduces the web of human relations to binaries of good and evil, colonized and colonizers, victims and oppressors, and aims to unmake and overturn this reality. I see anti-Zionism as a product of this worldview. In its more extreme expressions, anti-Zionism views the Zionist cause as fundamentally evil and the Palestinian cause as fundamentally good. It seeks, therefore, to negate the state of Israel. Bob Tabak termed this Shlilat HaYeshuv, the negation of the Yeshuv, the modern project of creating a Jewish homeland in Israel. Anti-Zionism, in its quest for ideological purity, ignores the confounding and tragic historical complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Reconstructionism, at its very core, is evolutionary, not revolutionary. Mordechai Kaplan defined Judaism as the evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people. He embraced a historical approach to understanding Judaism, and therefore an evolutionary approach towards transforming Judaism. I could say the Reconstructionist approach rejected messianism and embraced messiness. There is no escape from our messy reality. We can and should envision a better world and work towards it. But as students of history and of human behavior, we must always be striving to understand and contend with the complex and contradictory forces that shape our personal and collective reality. It is my position that Reconstructionism should reject any of the negations described above. The negation of the Palestinians, as advocated by the extreme Jewish right. The negation of the diaspora, as advocated by Israelis, who hold that the only valid Jewish life can be lived in the land of Israel. And the negation of the Zionist project itself, that of the Jewish people having a right to self-determination in our ancestral homeland, as advocated by anti-Zionists of the far left. Rather, I propose that reconstructing Judaism actively continue to affirm all of these positions, despite the impossible and currently despair-inducing messiness of it all. The right of our fellow Jews to live in safety and with self-determination in at least some portion of the land of Israel. The right of Palestinians to also live in safety and with self-determination in at least some portion of that same land, their homeland. And the right of Jews everywhere to be able to live safely wherever in the world they choose to reside. In addition, of course, we Reconstructionists must continue to advocate for a moral and just Judaism, founded on the principles of both our Jewish ethical tradition and on the principles of modern democracy and human rights. This reflects Kaplan's formulation of Jews living in two civilizations, and our mandate to shape our expression of Judaism in a way that merges the best aspects of both. My wise mother, Deborah Kligler Krasnow of blessed memory, kept a note above her desk, and I continue to embrace its paradoxical message, which strikes me as both essentially Jewish and as essentially true. There is no solution. Seek it lovingly. May we continue to seek together.
I'm going to invite everyone to take a deep breath. I spoke about how we asked these panelists to reflect from a religious perspective as Reconstructionists. I think what that means is that we look forthrightly at challenges that are facing us. We also look hard for the opportunities that are present. We are keenly aware that we can draw deeply on a rich storehouse of Jewish wisdom and Jewish practices, and we do everything that we can to bring them forward, and we reconstruct wherever is necessary. Thank you. Thank you, rabbis, teachers, for modeling this, not as an exercise, but as that which is vitally important and morally urgent. I'm not even going to begin to try to synthesize everything that we've taken on today. It is so rich, and there is so much reflecting to do. And we want to hear your thoughts about it before we begin to even synthesize about it. What I will say is that I hope that you saw mirrored back all that you shared with us, the love and the deep concern and the pain and the adamancy that we will continue to face this and face it together. I'm thank you so much to all of you for helping to make this concept of covenantal community a reality. And I do want to shift into thank yous now a little bit more widely. Once again, thanks so much to the members of the steering committee. And also there were a couple of folks who joined us on some committees, and you'll see their name at the bottoms. At the bottom, we worked hard, we worked fast, we worked efficiently, which is not so Reconstructionist, and I think to really, really good effect. I also want to thank members of the Reconstructing Judaism staff and our amazing tech team who pulled this together and worked incredibly hard, with a special shout out to Nina Korikin, who really, this would not have happened without her clarity, her capacity, and her calm. And we're also very grateful to the members of the Joint Israel Commission, who represent rabbis and members and many congregations across North America and abroad for their counsel and their vision in undergirding this. And I don't have a slide for it, but I want to raise some thanks to Seth Rosen as the chair of the board and the members of the Board of Governors for their support and in bringing this forward. And I know that I can speak for Rabbi Barbara Penzner and extend the same thanks to the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association board. And I want to thank all of you so much for participating, for sticking with us. We had a lot of registrants. We had a lot of people who stayed with us, for coming with open hearts and a lot of curiosity. We had a lot of, you heard me speak earlier about the challenges of boundaries and especially in the face of diversity, and you modeled that it is not only possible, but also important to do this. This kind of engagement, this kind of reflection, this kind of sharing, this kind of listening. So I'm going to close where I began. Wrestling is at the heart of what it means to be Jewish. Wrestling is at the heart of what it means to be Israel. Jacob, we are shaped out of that story of Jacob being renamed Israel in his monumental struggle with beings divine and human. We are in the midst of this struggle. At the beginning of our day today, we started off with panelists reflecting on where they came from and why and how they got there. And we've ended the day with glimpses of the future. And in between, there were rich opportunities to learn and explore. This is, as we've said all along, the beginning of more concentrated movement-wide engagement on this issue. We will be surveying you with what you would like to help us bring to life next, and also allow for deeper engagement with these very topics, and for opportunities to reflect and synthesize and make meaning. You heard many of us talk about our Reconstructionism's commitment to diversity and the centrality of democracy. We talked about acknowledging the reality of evolution. I want to raise up just at the end that Reconstructionism was also very deeply inspired by the philosophical school of thought of pragmatism, the school of thought that emerged in America after the Civil War, that assesses ideas on the success of their function or their implementation rather than on their intrinsic quality or eternal nature. Kaplan was very deeply inspired by the thinking of John Dewey in his embrace of pragmatism. And he was at once clear-seeing while also reaching for the visionary and what is that which is transformative, for that idealistic core that animates a religious sensibility. So I have two very, very pragmatic takeaways for you today before I turn the Zoom room over for our closing prayer to help us both achieve and assess our success. One is, when you receive a survey asking you about today, please fill it out so that we can learn from it. And the other is, there was a breakout session, a workshop on the upcoming World Zionist Congress elections. We recorded that workshop and we will send it out with follow-up materials. The World Zionist Congress is the location for diaspora Jews. I'm mostly talking to Americans here. Canada has a different process, but the World Zionist Congress is a location for diaspora Jews to have an opinion about what happens in Israel. And there's $1 billion in assets that are managed by the people who are elected via these elections, including many that go to non-government organizations that are an incredibly effective sector of Israeli society. And this upcoming election is a battle for the soul of these national institutions, the messianism that Jonathan was just talking about, the kind of authoritarian visit and supremacist vision of government that Amy was talking about that is what's going to be decided in this election. And so this is a very talkless thing in this speculation that we share more than we disagree about. This is the place for that which we share to express our values and to help to create the future that we were just reflecting on. So thank you, thank you, thank you again. And we're going to close this out with a blessing from Sabrina Sojourner. She is a powerful prayer leader. She is a community chaplain, a master teacher, a facilitator of important conversations. She has long been a representative of communities that are still building up their voices, and she is a word artist. She is a board member of Reconstructing Judaism and the co-chair of our Tikkun Olam Commission. Sabrina.
Thank you, Deborah, for a lovely introduction, but also I want to thank everyone from the beginning of the program all the way through the sessions who has given us a lot to think about. And I'll add one quote as I move into the prayer, which is from James Baldwin. Our history is each other. That is our only guide. One cannot denigrate or deny another's history without denigrating and denying our own. And I know there's been a lot of upset, or I hope, my wish is that we follow the divine in processing the distinction between our hurt and our fear and our vision for the future, because the two cannot necessarily live together if we're only in our hurt and our fear. So, dear one, who knows who we are, who knows our hurt and our pain, who knows also that all of creation is the divine. Guide us to recognize our diversity within our community and also across the world. Because you constantly remind us that we are in each other's lives, that we cannot exist without one another. We cannot exist without those who are close to us, and cannot exist with those who are far from us, because we are all your creations. And that is something we sometimes lose sight of, especially when we're scared. Aid us in moving past our fears and remind us of your vision and your love for us and for all of your creations. Amen.